Buonasera e benvenuti a tutti voi
Good
all'inaugurazione
evening and welcome everyone to the opening of the 14th academic year of the Sophia University Institute.
Sono veramente emozionata di vedere.
I am very moved
Welcome to the
to
opening of the academic year at the Sophia University Institute. It's 2 years since we had an occasion like this, and it is a very moving moment. My name is Martha. I do research into economics at the Sophia University Institute, and my story of love with Sophia has been going on for over 10 years now. I was among the students of the very first generation who passed through Sophia. There are many people who've done many courses here, people who've come from all over the world. There are people following through the direct streaming, and we are delighted about that. We would like, of course, to greet especially some of the guests who've managed to come here in person. We wanted to greet especially His Eminence Cardinal Giuseppe Bettori, the Archbishop of Florence and Grand Chancellor of our university.
Salutiamo di cuore anche Margaret.
We want to greet warmly Margaret Karam, who is Vice Grand Chancellor of the University and President of the Focolare Movement. You're very welcome.
Un caro saluto di benvenuto anche a Sua
Warm greetings also to His Eminence, the Metropolitan of Italy, His Eminence Policarpo Stavropoulos, the Metropolitan of Italy.
Benvenuti anche a
Welcome also to some of our guests who we'll get to know better, who feature in the program. Professor Tarocchini, who works at the University of the Sacred Heart. Professor Taccolini, Development Strategy Coordinator of the Brescia branch of the University of the Sacred Heart.
a qualcuno che è venuto
And some have come a little further away. Professor Peter Ario Laban, Vice Chancellor of the Daystar University in Nairobi, and Professor José Adriano Uquachali, Pro-Rector of the Catholic University of Benguela in Angola.
Salutiamo anche Professor.
We also greet Professor Don Alessandro Clemenza, Vice Chancellor of the Theological Faculty of Central Italy, representing the Dean and Professor Father Stefano Tarocchi.
Salutiamo Professor
We greet Professor Bartholomew from the University of Turin. And we're also delighted to have with us the Mayor of Incisa, Dr. Giulia Mugnai, the Mayor of Fellini and Incisa Valdarno, and Francesco Pignotti, and from another local authority. Marshal Alessandro Coletta, Lieutenant of the Carabinieri Station of Incisa. We thank Bishop Mario Maini, the former Bishop of Fiesole, the current Bishop of Fiesole, and the representative of the Archbishop of Siena. The Imam of the Islamic community in Florence, Dr. Izzedine Elzir, And lastly, but not least, Marco Salvatore, who is from the La Pira Center in Florence, representing the La Pira Center. Maurizio Cettini from the administrative group and other members of the Sophia University Institute who are with us today. I cannot fail to thank all of you and welcome the citizens of Loppiano, especially Donatella and Donato Di Paolo. Welcome to all of you. And now you will hear from some of our students. And so we will start the academic year with the Sophia hymn, and Beatrice with Genvedi will help us in this.
Nella
Grazie mille.
Thank you. That was fantastic to hear. With every generation of students, the faces change, but the hymn is the same. Just want to tell you a little bit about the program today. First of all, we'll have greetings from the institutional authorities. Then we'll have a very interesting lecture, especially 2 days away from the United Nations COP26 meeting in Glasgow on the environmental crisis. And we'll hear about this from Sergio Rondinara, that we need to look at this with more careful lenses and see, is it only an environmental crisis, or, as his talk says, is it also an anthropological crisis? The third part will be a panel dedicated to the university today in an age of integral ecology. What implications for a university? So now I would like to invite and welcome Cardinal Bettori to come onto the platform to greet us at the beginning of this academic year.
Illustre Vice Cancelliera, Magnifico Rettore,
Vice Chancellor, Chancellor, Your Eminence, authorities, teachers, students, dear guests, I'm very pleased to meet you here at the opening of this academic year. As has been mentioned before, this is the 14th of the Sophia University Institute. The culture of unity which the Institute is circulating calls into play a paradigm, that of relationality. In the last encyclical letter by Pope Francis, Fratelli Tutti, we see in this sense an interesting perspective in order to understand in a deeper and newer way the meaning of unity through the theme of fraternity. Among the various forms of fraternity that the institutions in society and in religion propose, the Pope proposed the one which expresses the evangelical logic best, which is in the parable of the Good Samaritan. Proximity is the great theme which emerges in the encyclical letter, and it is explained through juxtapositions, closeness, distance, individuality, community, global and local. Our attention is immediately guided in the parable to a foreigner, a stranger, who is wounded by an unforeseen circumstance and needs to deal not only with the accident, but the lack of help, which means giving up any relational pretense. This is where the first juxtaposition emerges, the one between closeness and distance, before the wounds of the stranger who has the courage to stop and set up a new relationship. Closeness is represented by the Levite and the priest. However, neither choose to soil their hands. And here is the mysterious plan of God in human history. A Samaritan, somebody who is distant, comes by, yet he is able not to look elsewhere. He is able to stop and to become involved before that sign of human waste. Proximity here seems to have a greater affinity with distance rather than with closeness. Fraternity is therefore revealed to us as an event which calls freedom into play, the freedom to become involved in this circumstance. This reflection by Pope Francis, and this is the second juxtaposition, is not a moralistic invitation to individuals to become weakened by the cries of the other, but it is an appeal to the church, a collective subject, to come into play and to follow the only master through the wounds of human fragility. The ecclesial us can always run the risk of being self-referential, which means to be clammed up within itself, unable to be opened by the wound of others. Fraternity, this is our second conclusion, is an outgoing ecclesial event, outgoing from our frontiers, opening into the streets. These openings need to bear in mind a further juxtaposition, local and global. If we don't realize what Pope Francis called the local taste, we cannot have a true encounter of a dialogue. And I go back to a quotation 145 from the encyclical letter. There is a false opening to the universal, the Pope writes, which comes from empty superficiality of those who are not able to penetrate truly into one's own homeland, and those who carry with them a resentment which is not resolved in the direction of their people. The projection outward is therefore the widening, the broadening of one's inner self, from which that universal global gaze, that total gaze comes about, which is necessary in order to interpret reality. And therefore, fraternity, our third statement, is an event which stems from a local taste, yet a universal gaze. This logic of fraternity, as has been given to us by the encyclical letter of the Pope, is what imbues from the inside the culture of unity of our university institute, what it is circulating as an interpretative principle of reality, as well as an objective of its academic mission. In this perspective, we also see the meeting which is scheduled in Florence next February with mayors and bishops of the Mediterranean countries, in order to be able to continue that itinerary which began in Bari in February 2020. Our churches feel the need to rediscover their identity, starting from a common belonging to the Mediterranean. And it is from here that every local church and every government can undertake that attitude of listening and welcoming of the cry of humanity, without being fearful of recognizing at this point of time any limits which are political, religious, social, cultural, economic, healthcare based, food based, water dependent, and ecological. In all this, we see the cry of Christ, his why. Why still today are we still finding and experiencing these sufferings, which are often hidden and silent, and which surround us? To share the sea means, as Pope Francis says, to recognize that despite great differences, we are all on the same boat. Before ending, as I had no official opportunity to do so, I would like to thank Professor Monsignor Piero Coda, recently nominated Secretary General of the International Theological Commission by the Holy Father and the consultative body of the Congregation for the Doctrine of Faith, thanking him for the precious contribution which he has offered as rector in the first 12 years of this institute. I would say with this expression, this evangelical levity, despite the effort, with ability and a long-sighted view, he incarnated the charismatic impulse and the prophetic vision of Chiara Lubich. The educational project found in these years its expression in new degree itineraries. This academic interest has was trusted by the church, so that the Congregation for Catholic Education has decided to nominate the successor not only as president but as rector, and therefore I would like to greet the rector, Professor Giuseppe Ergioras, certain that his ability and skill as a manager, united with deep synergy with the originality of the Sophia educational project, will allow him to carry out his work in the best possible way. And Professor, I am seeing this from the contacts we've had in this year and a half, continuing the line drawn so far and increasing possibilities of development for our institute. I would also like to express my gratitude and thanks to Madam Maria Voce Emmels for the attention that these years she has given not only to the Sophia University Institute, but also as Archbishop of Florence to the International Student Center Giorgio Lapira, and for the faithfulness to what Chiara Lubic has charismatically set off in our Tuscan land. And I am very pleased to have here the new president of the work of Mary, our vice president, Grand Chancellor, president of the Focolare movement, Margaret Carano. I'm sure that she will interpret the signs of the Holy Spirit in order to give that forward thrust, which is personal and community-based, and that only the Spirit is able to give to the disciples of the one Master. Finally, the presence among us of the Italian Metropolitan and Exarch for Southern Europe, His Eminence Polycarpos, is truly a reason for gratitude. I greet him fraternally, and I cannot forget my meetings with the Ecumenical Patriarch of Constantinople, His Holiness Bartholomew I. I remember his visit not only to this auditorium here in Lopiano, for the honorary degree that Sophia University Institute conferred on him, but also to the Archdiocese of Florence. And I remember shared prayer in solemn Vespers, which we celebrated in our ancient baptistry. And a thought of grateful memory also goes to the predecessor of His Eminence Polycarpos, Metropolitan Gennadios, who passed away more than a year ago. Just a year ago, he was a great interpreter and witness of dialogue, of life and love. I wrote to Patriarch Bartholomew to express my closeness to in this sudden disappearance, but I'm certain that the work of Gennadios will bring grace in the path towards ut omnes unum sint, which is deeply thirsted for by the Church of Christ, humanity, and the city of Florence, as the plan of salvation takes shape. And I would end by wishing you, students, professors, staff, everybody, including the citizens of Lopiano, a happy beginning for your academic year.
Se posso fermarla, grazie tanto di queste bellissime
Thank
parole.
you for these wonderful
porgerà un piccolo
words.
dono.
One of our students will offer you a small gift on behalf of the academic community.
Now
I wish to invite Margaret Karam, Vice Grand Chancellor. This is the first time we have the opportunity to welcome you joyfully and to have you with us.
Sua Eminenza Cardinal Giuseppe Bettori.
Your Eminence Cardinal Bettori, Grand Chancellor, thank you for your words. Professor Giuseppe Argiolas, Magnificent Rector. His Excellency Bishop Meini, Bishop of Fiesole. Most Reverend Eminence Polycarpos, Metropolitan of Italy. Dr. Izzedine Elzir, Imam of Florence, and all of the civil and religious and academic persons here, and all the students and all of you who are connected with the university, who are connected in one way or another to this event. I am delighted to speak to you. This is the first time since my election as President of the Work of Mary last February that I have addressed a word of greeting to all those gathered for the opening of the new academic year at Sophia. In my role as Vice Grand Chancellor, I am really quite nervous, as you can tell from my voice. I do this with joy and trepidation, looking forward to getting to know personally the faculty, staff, students, and each member of the academic community. Today's occasion is already a really good start. The goals that Sophia sets itself, as you know, are lofty and engaging. They require everyone to give the best of themselves in a continuous openness to dialogue, to listening, in order to combine mind and heart to make academic study a training ground that can make an impact on thought and life, a place where intellectual commitment is always seeking new ways to respond to the cultural needs of our time. The challenges encountered and those still facing us are many. But there are also the goals that have been achieved, such as the establishment of the Athenagoras Chiara Lubich Chair of Studies, the collaboration fostered with universities on the various continents, the creation of the Latin American Sophia, and also contacts made with Jewish and Muslim scholars, Hindu academics, and members of other religions, and the recognition of native and indigenous cultural heritages. I would therefore like to express my heartfelt thanks to everyone. My thanks go first of all to you students who were here at Sophia or were connected online because you were unable to travel. The restrictions caused by the pandemic imposed sacrifices in the previous academic year, such as the renunciation of extracurricular activities and restrictions on socializing, and these still cause hardships that we share with everyone in the world. I'm close to all of you students, to your families, and especially to those who are experiencing moments of pain and uncertainty. Your intercultural nature is a precious resource because each of you carries within yourselves the gifts of your own continent, and you also know the misfortunes and vulnerabilities of your peoples. Your pain joins the broader cry of the young, who are calling for inclusive education and integral development that will bring about a turning point even in the face of the devastating global climate crisis, education that must be implemented in the various academic and educational programs. And here I'd like to return to the roots of Sophia's vision and methodology, where dialogue and reciprocity are the hallmarks that apply directly to the context of human relationships, generating a climate of transparency, openness, attention to others, and self-giving. Goals and perspectives. Environmental crisis, anthropological crisis. The theme chosen for the opening of this academic year is stimulating because it contains important perspectives for research and action. There are many authoritative voices. Just think of the demanding and comprehensive work promoted by the Dicastery for the Service of Integral Human Development following Pope Francis' text Laudato Si. Patriarch Bartholomew has clarified several times the relationship between respect for the person and respect for creation. Last year, on the 21st of October 2020, in the lecture for his honorary doctorate in philosophy, conferred on him by the Pontifical Antonianum University, he stated, "For us, protection of the natural environment and real respect for one's neighbor are two sides of the same coin. They are connected and indivisible attitudes. Moreover, the close relationship between social and ecological problems is amply expressed in the joint message for the World Day of Prayer for the Protection of Creation on the 1st of September 2017. The World Council of Churches has also expressed its views. Professor Sauker, in the conference of the 5th of October 2020 at the Lateran University, stated how much the ecological viewpoint should be an integral part of human formation. An integral ecology involves relationships. We are well aware of the value of the Abu Dhabi document on human fraternity for world peace and common shared life, signed by Pope Francis and the Grand Imam of Al-Azhar, released on the 4th of February 2019. I'd like to quote a few statements that particularly struck me, all the more so because they were made by these two leading figures in full agreement. We who believe in God, on the basis of our religious and moral responsibility, and through this document call upon ourselves, upon the leaders of the world, as well as the architects of international policy and world economy, to work strenuously to spread the culture of tolerance and of living together in peace. We call upon men and women of culture in every part of the world to rediscover the values of peace, justice, goodness, beauty, human fraternity and coexistence, in order to confirm the importance of these values as anchors of salvation for all and to promote them everywhere.
Le sfide dell'educazione, lo sappiamo, sono numerose.
The challenges of education, as we know, are numerous and affect the new generations directly. And we recall here the proposal of the Global Educational Pact, wanted by Pope Francis, which has significantly involved the Sophia University Institute since its preparation process began. Quite a few teachers and students have collaborated in it with passion and continue to support it after the official launch on the 15th of October 2020 at the Lateran University in Rome. A global alliance, therefore, between all educational stakeholders for the promotion of a new cultural model. Hence, the key role universities play in this. So we at Sophia must also feel challenged by such an arduous goal. The Educational Pact suggests, in fact, that we study to find other ways of understanding the economy, politics, growth and progress, so that they may truly be at the service of the human person and of the entire human family in the perspective of an integral ecology. In the face of these great goals, I realize that the many demands of academic training at Sophia rest on the shoulders of a few professors and that additional staff are needed for student scouting and administration. I'm aware of the logistical needs, and I follow with interest the work of the Commission that was established 2 years ago, which accompanies the process of further investment in human and economic resources for the development and improvement of the administrative, residential and academic areas. So what is my wish for all of you? I offer it with these reflections by Chiara at a conference in 2005. She said the following: "The human person, endowed with intelligence, should be part of and collaborate in the fulfillment of God's unitary design for the universe. But it is necessary to be love in order to weave the golden thread among beings. Human progress is closely linked to the progress of the environment in which they live and by which they are conditioned. If people's aims are not economic interests and selfishness, but instead love for other people and for nature, then with each person's contribution, the earth will be transformed to the point of becoming an earthly paradise. This is my heartfelt wish for all of you at the beginning of the academic year.
Grazie. Grazie Margaret anche per te, un piccolo dono da me di benvenuto.
Thank you, Margaret. We also have a small gift for you.
Grazie. Io chiedo scusa per una
I apologize. We overlooked something. Want to take a step backwards and greet one or two people. Archimandrite Nicholas, warmly welcome.
Reverendissimo Archimandrita
The very Reverend Archimandrite Athenagoras.
E infine il maresciallo Doroso, che è capitano del comando dei carabinieri di Incisa Filina Valdarno.
Maresciallo Doroso from the Carabinieri in Incisa.
Adesso con gioia ascoltiamo la rappresentante dei nostri
we'll
studenti,
now
una delle rappresentanti.
happily
la
listen
nostra
to the
studentessa
representative of the
Valeria. Invito
student
a salire
body.
questo palco per darci il suo saluto da parte degli studenti.
A greeting from all the students.
Prego Valeria.
Valeria, you're very welcome.
Buonasera.
Good evening.
Ormai alla fine del mio servizio.
As a student representative now at the end of my term of service, it's with pleasure that I greet all those here, all the authorities, our Grand Chancellor and Vice Grand Chancellor. I'm very bad at names, but all the religious and civil authorities, and also the little town of Loppiano, and all my student colleagues, and all of us who are sharing this evening with us online. Since I haven't met many of you in person, let me introduce myself. My name is Valeria, I'm Italian, and I'm concluding my master's degree in political science at Sophia. While I was talking with the other students, we stopped to consider how nice it is to be here in person and to know that at the same time many friends are following us from a distance. It's fantastic and it's precious. To be here, to be able to celebrate this day together is not to be taken for granted, nor is it an obvious happening, and for that reason it's truly precious. We all come from difficult times where many of us students didn't know if they would ever really be able to come here to Italy, while other students actually happened to be stuck here in Sophia without being sure when they would be able to go home. There were professors who suddenly had to adapt and reinvent themselves to work in an online environment. A number of people then went for months and months together without actually seeing each other face to face, and sometimes without even meeting in person. I met one of my professors here for the first time in person this evening. Throughout all of this, here at Sophia, the technical, administrative and information technology staff, I thank for their continuous support as they tried to resolve a different troublesome situation every day. So given all of this, it's no small thing that we're all here this evening. Now we're here to see together what happens in the aftermath, in the post-2021 period. I won't go into what will happen this year. or what the plans are, which the professors might speak about, but I'd like to focus with you on a few words: journey, commitment, and openness. Whoever undertakes to study here at Sophia undertakes a journey. I've been here 2 years, living on the university campus, and although I have travelled quite a bit in my life, I can say that the road I've travelled here has been much more interesting, powerful, deconstructing, and refounding than many other previous journeys or travels. Often, the most vivid memories you have of this university are linked to herbal teas or dinners with students, hours of talks with professors, unexpected meetings. They are memories linked to relationships. On this journey, in fact, there is a recurring focus on relationships. Relationship is the key word of Sophia. Here, in fact, we are called to focus on 3 relationships. Each one is unique, its own, special, and at the same time mutually dependent and connected with its other 2 companions. I speak of the relationship with oneself, with others, and for those who believe, with God. In each of them you find signs of the others, and each one enables you to face today this university path. Each one enables you to face today this university path, and tomorrow the path of life. Everyone makes this journey as best they can and as they want to, through the pact, the community, dialogues with the professors, the people around us, people seeking you out, but also through solitude, through silence, pain, and conflict. It can happen that we quarrel, that in the face of our studies we feel like giving it all up, that we get angry about the organization of an exam or some logistical aspect or other, that in the face of the effort we're making to understand one of our student companions and therefore our brother or sister whose culture is different from our own, we feel incompatibility, closure, and even at times racism. If this happens, if all this happens, it can be a good thing. Let's try not to run away from it, not pretending that it's not there, but to look straight at it, digging down within us and seeing what it brings forth. It's no coincidence that this evening we're talking about integral ecology. If it's true that everything is connected and that we are all interdependent on one another, it's obvious that the word relationship becomes fundamental to our journey. The second word I've chosen is commitment. To walk along this path requires commitment. We sang a few minutes ago, Sophia, a home for all. Sophia is my home. Every time I take care of it, whether I do something small or big, every time I take responsibility, every time I clean a room, every time I contact one of the professors for some reason, if I propose and carry out a project for myself and for others. Sophia is my home every time I realize that ecology is truly integral, wherever it's a 360-degree ecology, even when that isn't easy, whether it's in relating to people, to taking care of different spaces around us, to being faithful to completing a task. But above all, Sophia is home when I commit myself to welcoming the other and I feel welcomed. Finally, the last word is openness.
non me ne voglia, il movimento dei focolari
Sophia and the Focolare movement belong to the work of Mary, the Focolare movement, but they're not for the movement as a whole, or they're not belong to the movement as ends in themselves. If we think that the relationship is fundamental to the experience of this university, if we are aware that we're on a path where our ways of thinking and acting can be subject to change, if we want, the question we can ask ourselves is, what fruits do we want this pathway to bear? So at this moment in my life, I'm working in my own city of Genoa. And now more than ever, even though I live and work far away from Sophia, I feel I am Sophiana, I belong to Sophia. Now more than ever, I realize that words that are common to all of us, such as relationship, listening, trust, fundamental, and common in every personal and public sphere, these words have acquired a special flavor, a special savor for me, thanks to these 2 years of life here. And now I feel more than ever obliged to imbue my daily life that I'm experiencing now with what I have experienced here at Sophia. This is where Sophia's real challenge begins. The moment you find yourself back in your own town, taking up a new job, coming into contact with other paradigms of economics, education and politics, there will be another piece of Sophia. So I'm talking about that little piece, that little tile of the mosaic that seems not to be there. The moment when you have to account to yourself for the path you have taken. The moment when you realize that the relationships that you experienced and worked on in Sophia, if they are relationships based on truth, become a network of lights, like lanterns from the Sophia University scattered around the world. I'm also thinking of the situation in which one can, and in fact one has a moral duty, to bring out of Sophia, out of this place, the concepts we have learned and the meanings that we have experienced in our own selves in order to give a different life breath to the world in which we're living. At Sophia, we learn that integral ecology corresponds to a person made whole. And in order to become a whole person, it's necessary to get involved and to travel. So, we can only wish everyone a good journey.
Bellissima questa immagine della lanterna.
Beautiful image of the lanterns.
Non abbiamo dubbio che Valeria è già una lanterna nel comune di Genova, grazie.
We have no doubt that this is already a lantern in the municipality of Genova, which distinguishes what the experience of Sophia is. I'd like to invite here the Metropolitan of Italy, Policarpos, who would also like to greet us.
Vostra Eminenza, Signor Cardinale Giuseppe Bettore,
Your Eminence, Cardinal Giuseppe Bettore, great Chancellor, most excellent Bishop of Fiesole, Dr. Margaret Karam, president of the Focolare movement, rector of the Institute Sophia, Monsignor Coda, all professors, students, and guests. With great pleasure, I have chosen to be here with you today at the opening actions of the Sophia University Institute since my election to the Metropolitan See of Italy of the Ecumenical Patriarchate, knowing that this institute has a special significance for those relations between our churches. Welcoming also the teachings, the prophetic teachings of His Holiness Patriarch Bartholomew. This institute hosts the ecumenical chair, Patriarch Athenagoras and Chiara Lubich, set up 50 years after the encounter of these two extraordinary figures of Christianity. Our sister Chiara, of blessed memory, has welcomed the invitation of the Spirit to devote her entire life to the cause of unity among churches and peoples, respecting others in their human, cultural, social integrity in a fraternity with no boundaries, so as to glorify God through His entire creation. And the cause of unity emerged as a need of the immense love which she perceived in the encounter with God and the dialogue with all. To be one, she said, requires that love which is able to open entirely to others in order to enter the faith of others, to see the world as others see it. Chiara taught us that dialogue and unity can grow only if we know how to share other persons, if we can see them in all their different shades without judging, but approving everything which we have in common. Also, the history of Patriarch Athenagoras is that of a man who lived through the divisions produced by wars, but who understood how to begin from the scandal of the division of Christians to that only dialogue and encounter can enable us to overcome every difficulty. He was a great promoter of the pan-Orthodox unity of the Church. He understood the need of the encounter with the Church of Rome as the encounter between two brothers who have not met for a long time and have a lot to tell one another. The embrace with Paul, Pope VI, and the pan-Orthodox conferences of Rhodes witness a new way of being church in the world and being truly the salt of the earth. Today, thanks to these great dreamers, those who are concrete, however, in their intuitions, we find ourselves once again together and share our wealth as gifts for one another. The ecumenical Patriarch Bartholomew, in his long ministry to the throne of Constantinople, serving the Orthodox Church, continued this diaconia for unity and further developed it and deepened those links, and he surprised us all with prophetic intuitions which not only accompany the spiritual life of the Orthodox faithful, but of all believers and every man and woman of goodwill. His love for Chiara and the respect for the Focolare movement, united to the enthusiasm for the constitution of this institute, give us the hope that also future generations will be able to build a new society, build on solid foundations of solidarity, respect, and cooperation. Allow me, however, to recall in this August moment even the figure of my own predecessor of blessed memory, Metropolitan Gennadios, who for many years was in charge of this archdiocese, a great friend of Chiara, the movement, and this institution, which he always followed with special interest and love. May we all have at the beginning of this new academic year his blessing and his support before the throne of God. Wishing all of you a fruitful year of studies, research, community life, knowledge, love, mutual love. I assure my participation and that of my archdiocese to the activities of the Sophia University Institute, certain that only dialogue and encounter will be able to aid us overcome the great difficulties of humanity. Thank you.
Grazie, Sua Eminenza.
Thank you, Your Eminence.
Grazie di queste parole.
Thank you for these words. And now I would like to call on the stage our rector, Professor Giuseppe Argioles, who has taken up the helm of Sophia at a time which is very delicate, only a few days from his nomination. The first lockdown took place in 2020. So on behalf of the entire community, I would like to thank you for the dedication, the love and the commitment with whom you are guiding us in order to emerge better, not only to overcome this moment, but to emerge better.
Eminenza Reverendissima, Cardinale Giuseppe Bettori.
Eminence Cardinal Giuseppe Bettori, Professor Amato, Great Chancellor, thank you for your words, for your constant, continuous and discreet presence, point of reference for me personally and for all of us. Margaret Coram, Vice Great Chancellor, Grand Chancellor, thank you for your presence and for your support and your unity. We are both in the first year, so we support each other. His Excellency, Monsignor Mini, your constant presence also supports us. His Eminence Polycarpus, thank you for your presence. This brings us the wisdom of the East and brings to heart moments of encounter with His Holiness Bartholomew, who is always present in our heart and in our prayers. Dr. Izzedine Elzir, Imam of Florence, thank you. The relationship with the Muslim community of Florence is very good. We have several students, some of them got a degree recently. This enables me to say of the presence of several Muslim students of several traditions, including the Shiite tradition from Algeria, from the US, from India, and also from other religions, Buddhist from Japan, and a great reason for enrichment of ours. Miss Giulia Mugnai, Mayor of Figline and Incisa Valdarno, thank you for your presence. The collaboration, read your interview, very touching, and we also want to collaborate more and more with you and your administration with the municipality and the whole area. Mr. Antonio De Rosa and Mr. Coletta of Carabinieri, thank you for your presence in the difficult moments of the pandemic. The relationship with your headquarters was a good point of reference for us to do things well and to ensure everyone's safety, health. So thank you for your cooperation.
Professor Peter
Lavan, Vice Chancellor of the University of Nairobi, and welcome to Professor Jose Adriano Uquachali, Prorector of the University of Benguela in Angola. So that tells us about the international aspect, dimension of our university, and Professor Alessandro Clemenza, Vice President of the Theological Faculty of Central Italy, and but you are also a professor in Sophia, Professor Taccolini, coordinator of strategies of development of the Catholic University of the Sacred Heart. Thank you for your presence. The relationship with the Catholic University has been going on for years, and we hope we can sign soon a framework agreement with you. Dear students, dear colleagues, dear staff, and all of you, friends of Sophia University Institute who are present here or connected online, welcome. Your presence filling this auditorium or by means of the online collection, an expression of your sincere friendship, is, let me say, a reason for consolation and at the same time a sign of hope. I am also quite moved, Margaret, you know. It is with great emotion that I address all of you on the occasion of the inauguration of this academic year, a solemn and festive moment with these words of mine, which have the task of sharing with you, albeit briefly, not too briefly, because it is 2 academic years, so I say it straight away, especially to the students. So share with you what we have experienced over the past year. In my mind, in my heart, in my words, there is certainly emotion, but even more profound gratitude for what we have experienced so far. It was 2nd of March 2020 when I received from the hands of my dear predecessor, Professor Piero Coda, the decree signed on 7th of December 2007 and delivered to our foundress Chiara Lubich on 9th of December by His Excellency Archbishop Vincenzo Zani, with which the Congregation for Catholic Education erected our university institute with the name Sophia, which means wisdom. A few days earlier, we had received the rescript, as His Eminence reminded us, appointing as rector the man who until then had been the dean, which caused us great surprise at this unexpected decision, which we saw as a recognition of the journey made in the first 12 years of life and an encouragement to go forward with courage and confidence. I'd like to emphasize in particular the gradual transition from the single master's degree and doctorate course to the current 4 master's degree and doctorate courses in Trinitarian ontology with specializations in theology and philosophy, in political science with specializations in fraternity and public life, theoretical basis and operational lines, and in governance of the common goods, in culture of unity with specializations in pedagogy of communion for a culture of peace, and in dialogical processes of intercultural and interreligious mediation, in economics and management with specializations in management for a civil and sustainable economy held in English. There are now a total of 91 students with the different types, ordinary, extraordinary, and visiting students, with the possibility of receiving a double degree from the University of Perugia, the Faculty of Theology of Central Italy, or the European University of Rome. We have also registered the development of the doctoral school, which has 88 doctoral students with the double degrees from Italian and foreign universities. Let me underline the presence among our students, doctoral students, as already said, of members of several Christian communities, Christian churches, and also other faiths. So we have a total of 179 students enrolled from 46 countries, not counting the postdoctoral school, which, thanks to special research funding, now has 13 researchers. In addition to this, the intense work of the special chairs should be mentioned, the one dedicated to Piero Pasolini on ontology and scientific rationality, and the ecumenical one dedicated to Patriarch Athenagoras and Chiara Lubich, which have the joint privilege of holding jointly with the ecumenical Patriarch of Constantinople, led with wise prophecy by the ecumenical Patriarch His Holiness Bartholomew I. And also just as significant have been the initiatives put in place by our research centers, Evangelii Gaudium, Sophia Global Studies, and Politics and Human Rights. In 2020, we also launched the Advanced Management Training Course in Management of Socially Oriented Enterprises in collaboration with the Archdiocese of Pisa, the Archdiocese of Vercelli, the Institute of Management of the High School Sant'Anna of Pisa, and various partners from the socioeconomic area of Pisa, which led to the graduation of 17 students. It is with joy that I can tell you of the growth of the local branch of Sophia Latin America Caribbean. In 2021, completed the degree in community leadership with the participation of 89 students, 27 teachers and tutors, and 100 participants in the training program for teachers. In these very weeks, collaboration with the Congregation for Catholic Education is being intensified with a view to establishing a local office in Latin America and the Caribbean in the near future. We are witnessing a great progress in the initiative strongly desired by our African students and carried out thanks to their leadership and commitment in collaboration with New Humanity and the Political Movement for Unity of the Focolare Movement and with the patronage and financing of UNESCO. The initiative Together for a New Africa sees the participation of about 150 students and the involvement of 15 teachers from 9 African countries. 2020 also saw the development of Sophia's editorial dimension, publishing dimension, that in collaboration with Città Nuova began the series Tracks, internationally series with references dedicated to publishing the work, especially but not only of young researchers, strongly desired by the presidency of the Focolare Movement, and which has already brought to light 9 monographs and will soon see the publication of the 10th, one dedicated to the study of wisdom. Meanwhile, the series Percorsi, Pathways, which collects the major text, continues with a beautiful essay on the prophetic figure of a precursor of the culture of unity, such as scientist Piero Pasolini, written by Father Albino Dell'Eva, while an innovative and ambitious publishing venture, which is very ambitious, the Dynamic Dictionary of Trinitarian Ontology, which is international and inter-university, inter-academic, and has its lively center of gravity at Sophia. In 2021, we were delighted to receive the A-band recognition of our journal Sophia by the ANVUR, A-N-V-U-R. On 2nd of March 2020, as I mentioned, the handover took place, and 2 days later, an unprecedented season opened not only for Sophia, but also for the whole world, pandemic time. The first days of dismay gave way to fear and uncertainty, to the difficulty, almost impossibility of planning. Several of our undergraduates and doctoral students were abroad in their own countries. It soon became clear that they would not be able to return to Sophia, just as it became clear that face-to-face classes were no longer possible. We did not lose heart, and with an unprecedented commitment and the contribution of all, including staff, students, and teachers, we achieved in 15 days what we had imagined doing in the past for several years. That is the introduction of online teaching. Thus, we immediately devised a strategy to be developed in 3 stages. 1, to complete the 2019-2020 academic year by creating the conditions to be able to complete lectures, take exams, and discuss dissertations for master's and doctoral degrees. 2, creating the conditions for offering a high-level online service through the use of a professional platform designed specifically for education, accompanying this transition with a training course for teachers to adapt the teaching to the new conditions, also taking into account that we had students in time zones ranging from Chile to Taiwan. 3, third step, aiming to make the experience gained in the 2 academic years, 1920 and 2021, bear fruit in order to arrive in 21-22 to a new step, to offer systematic training in online mode through a specific diploma for those who wish to study at Sophia, but do not have the possibility of coming to Loppiano or do not have the qualifications to attend master's or doctoral degrees. The first 2 objectives have been amply achieved. Now I can say that we are launching the new online formation offer that we have called Sophia Web Academy with 2 diplomas, one in Culture of Unity and the other in Dialogical Leadership. Classes are scheduled to start on 29th of November. in 1 month time. It's a big publicity, is allowed. I invite you to go on our website to find out more. Thinking about the difficult year we have had, I cannot but say a heartfelt thank you to all the staff for their commitment to our students, even during the summer period, reorganizing holidays, so the students who were unable to return to their own countries. We heard from Valeria, our representatives of the students, could stay at the college. Lopiano. Sincere thanks to our permanent Mariapolis for the way it has extended its arms to all. And thank you, students, for living this period with a sense of responsibility and solidarity among yourselves and with everyone else. This year has been full of changes. The Vice Presidency of the Board of Directors, the Presidency of the Foundation per Sophia, Community Life Coordination, Academic Secretariat, Management Coordination, Administrative Manager, etc. Thanks to all those who have left for other tasks and also have accepted to cover this new service. But let me thank in a very special way my predecessor, Professor Piero Coda. You know that Pope Francis has recently, as Cardinal Bettori said, has recently appointed him Secretary General of the International Theological Commission. Thank you, Piero, for what you have done so far with patience, fair-sightedness and wisdom for Sophia, and for what you are still doing and will continue to do as a Professor of Sophia and in the various roles you hold in the Institute. Thank you very much.
What
horizons are opening up before us? Consolidating what we have done so far, letting ourselves be challenged by today's history. With gratitude, I want to recall, among other things, our collaboration with the Italian Catholic Bishops' Conference and with the Archdiocese of Florence for the preparation of the meeting of the Mediterranean bishops entitled Mediterranean Frontier of Peace, which will take place in Florence in February 2022. In this context, we also intend to carry out in partnership with the Giorgio Lapira International Student Center a summer school on the theme of multiple dialogue, polylogos, communication, politics, and interfaith dialogue. Pope Francis has launched the Global Educational Pact, dividing it into 5 areas with the lead universities that will be responsible for nurturing and developing this path on a global level, encouraging networking. These areas are the following: dignity and human rights, lead University Notre Dame, USA; fraternity and cooperation, lead partner Catholic University of the Sacred Heart of Milan; technology and integral ecology, lead partner University Javeriana, Bogotá, Colombia; peace and citizenship with the Pontifical Lateran University Rome as lead partner; cultures and religions with the lead partner Universidad Santo Tomás, Manila, Philippines; and the smallest one, the Sophia University Institute, Lopiano. We want to respond to this responsibility with humility, commitment, and joyful service. On the other hand, Pope Francis, in his audience of 14th of November 2019 at the Vatican, gave us 3 fundamental words for us: wisdom, covenant, and exit, thus underlying our origin, our mission, our present, and our future. On these horizons, we want to continue to work together in unity with others, living the covenant and desiring to receive the gift of wisdom. And I think of Chiara that we have in our heart. She looks, she smiles to us, and she can help us. And with this commitment, this desire, this wish, I declare officially open the academic year 21-2022, the 14th of the Sophia University Institute.
inviterei il professor
I invite Professor Coda to come on the stage, please.
Questo è il simbolo, no, di Sofia.
This is the symbol of Sophia, the Trinity.
Il regalo non sia più adeguato a un teologo.
I think the gift is not appropriate for a Trinitarian. We cannot have a more appropriate gift for a Trinitarian expert such as Piero Coda.
Grazie Rettore.
Thank you, Rector, and thank you, Piero Coda. And let's enter the second moment of the program as I invite Professor Sergio Rondinara to come on stage, and we listen to his prolusion of the academic year entitled Environmental Crisis and Anthropological Crisis. Professor Rondinara, engineer, professor of epistemology and cosmology at the Sophia University Institute, members of the directing committee of Science and Faith and Interpretation of Real, an area of interdisciplinary research between science and theology promoted by the Italian Bishops' Conference in collaboration with the Pontifical Lateran University, and also co-director of Science and Theology collection of Città Nuova. So he will talk about relationship with science and faith. So I give the floor to him. Dear students, dear colleagues, academic authorities, and dear guests, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your presence. I start with this reflection on the environmental crisis by considering some words expressed by authoritative personalities in very different fields, one scientific and the other religious. The first word is Anthropocene. In this neologism, coined by Professor Paul Crutzen, Nobel Prize for Chemistry, he recognizes the human being's capacity to be a geological force, in that they're capable of changing the conditions of life on the surface of the planet. The second statement, second in no small part, is the one expressed by Pope Francis in Laudato Si on number 101. We read, it will be of no use for us to describe the symptoms if we do not recognize the human root of the ecological crisis. Both statements underline the anthropic character of the environmental crisis and its anthropological relevance. It is precisely to this aspect that I would like to draw your attention. While in the recent past the relationship between human beings and nature has been a balanced and often cooperative one, let us think of the agricultural and farming society that preceded us. Today it has taken on a critical configuration to which we commonly refer as the environmental crisis. By this, I mean the deterioration in the relationship between human society and the natural environment that is typical of industrialized countries, but which is now spreading to all latitudes. This environmental crisis refers to a deeper crisis that affects the human person as a whole. It is an anthropological crisis. It is the alarm bell of a profound anthropological crisis that is the result of a precise conception that modern and contemporary humans have of themselves. Humans, and therefore humanity, that in the search of their own self-fulfillment has conformed and identified itself more with Homo faber than Homo sapiens, and has appointed themselves as absolute masters of their own destiny and nature. How to express this anthropological crisis? Using the support of the rich array of disciplines that study the environmental issue, especially the sociology of the environment. The anthropological character of this crisis can be summed up in 3 points: unsustainability, social injustice, and decay of the quality of life. And I'll try to make a quick recognition of these 3 points. They could seem not exhaustive, but this was not the objective, just to announce them. Unsustainability. An interesting attempt to quantitatively estimate the sustainability of the Earth system is that represented by the ecological footprint. Already at the beginning of this millennium, the average ecological footprint of mankind on planet Earth, i.e. the weight of our being and living on the natural environment, was estimated to be more than 1/3 of the available space. In other words, even 20 years ago, humanity's total consumption was considerably higher than what nature was capable of regenerating on a continuous basis. Humanity today is eroding its natural capital without taking into account the opportunities it is taking away from future generations. We could identify the environmental crisis with the extraordinary capacity to take, circulate, and consume materials, and the technologies currently available allow industries and individuals to move so many resources, natural resources, that the balance of the entire planet is upset. Second aspect, social injustice. In order to survive, the human population uses incredibly different shares of natural capital depending on where they live. We can speak of an ecological crisis as an unbalanced distribution of natural resources. Here, the category justice comes into play. In fact, according to estimates made with the ecological footprint, we have 3 categories of countries. Those rich in both environment and financial resources, which manage to balance their ecological footprint. Second group, those rich mainly in financial resources, but which have a high biological deficit. And among them, we have Italy and Japan. Third group, those rich in environment, but not in financial resources, which are balanced or even have a biological capacity greater than their per capita consumption. At this point, if we were to ask ourselves where and how countries with an ecological deficit find the natural resources they consume, the answer would be immediate. They are imported. These resources are imported. But it is precisely the social and environmental impact of world trade in raw materials that is under scrutiny in the justice category. Some international groups and institutions consider the current way in which goods, including environmental goods, are bought and sold to be very unfair, because free trade without customs barriers between countries with disproportionately different financial capacities cannot generate fairness. Those with financial power can thus access natural goods located in countries with weak economies with great ease, remunerating them with prices that are highly advantageous to their profit margins. This is known as environmental dumping. That is, natural goods selling off natural goods because they are there are no measures in place to protect them or control their extraction. Alongside this is social dumping. Natural goods for these countries are cheap because the staff involved in their extraction and initial processing in loco receive very low wages and almost always have no union or social insecurity.
Terzo aspetto, decadimento della qualità della vita.
The third aspect is the decrease of the quality of life. The expression quality of life both means being healthy and also feeling well. And this entails physical and psychological parameters. When it comes to healthcare, the environmental crisis identifies with the creation of new illnesses or the widening of those which already exist. One important aspect is that of artificialization. And we note that we tend to live in environments which are more and more artificial. And within us, we are looking for an approach and a fruition of nature which is non-invasive and which respects its harmonies. In the deepest aspect, we are waiting for nature which is not transformed so as to be able to affirm an otherness which we have nostalgia for. Nature, with its great display of life, its balances, is before us as that otherness, that purity, even though sometimes it is idealized, in which we would like to mirror ourselves. Deep down inside, we try to enter in her, not in order to live her out fully, to understand her symbolic values, but not to give it intellectual value, but to live her out from within. The environmental crisis, therefore, is an anthropological crisis. Specifically, it is a semantic crisis, a crisis of significance. We are losing more and more our ability to recognize and to give lasting meanings to natural objects, the things of the world. Personally, I believe, and this is the thesis I put forward to your attention, that a relationship between person and nature, which is renewed and appropriate to everyday challenges, must go via the recovery of the meaning of relationships that connect each one of us with nature itself. But how can we recover the meaning and relationships which connect us to nature? This question is a cultural challenge which is not of little moment, both because we don't have immediate responses and because we need to undertake a full-scale research showing the semantic wealth of the words person, nature, and relationship between these two terms. Such a challenge has an enormous cultural weight and must be articulated on various levels of human action. I present four. One is anthropological and cultural, thought, ethical, and religious. These four levels are paths to recover those meanings which we are looking for, and at the same time they are milestones of an educational path which is personal and social and in need to be explored. This educational path will have to bear in mind also university contributions which are lacking today, particularly in the humanities, with what pertains to the natural world. I think about how the humanities should be given a new moment to, such as the philosophy of nature, theology of creation, which are treated as Cinderellas in academic programs. Let's look at these four levels then. The first one is cultural and anthropological, and how these levels can help us to recover meaning. To recover the meaning of relationships linking us to nature, part of us, means to recover on our own land those traditions which have marked culturally the past of the generations that came before us, in order to be able to rediscover vital elements such as attitudes, behaviors, educational forms of a relationship with nature which is full of significance. One step along this path could be the recovery of those vital elements of the agricultural and farming civilization, or even more ancient civilizations which came before us on the same territory. These, in their wealth, which is both symbolic of knowledge, religious and artistic, can be a light for us in order to recover within our artificialized society the meaning of relationships linking us to nature. The knowledge of a different world from what we have today, but a world which really existed, can help us to objectivize and understand the shortcomings of our time. Without forgetting the future, the past will offer us this type of knowledge. Today, more than in the past, those who are not anchored to a cultural tradition will not be able to organize a better future. I would just dwell, though briefly, to talk about the importance of those practical attitudes which we call lifestyle. These are already the result of having recovered some meanings of nature, but at the same time, in their day-to-day implementation, they take us to a further recovery of these meanings. A lifestyle is the result of our personal assumption of responsibility before the environmental crisis, and is qualified for a specific way of organizing our existence in a sober and responsible manner. This lifestyle expresses a group of personal preferences which are implemented in day-to-day practice, and they become a place where the responsibilities and the choice of the individual entwine with social life up to the public institution level. Speaking about a responsible lifestyle with regard to the environmental crisis necessarily implies a reference to the world of goods, which we make use of daily, and that publicity instrumentalizes by creating false needs in order to fill and fulfill our existence. For those who live immersed in a consumption society, it's not easy to understand how increasingly under fire we are from stimulus to desire goods which are not so necessary or prestigious, not so much necessary or prestigious, but often useless, true status symbols, often voided of every real significance for the existence of a person. Expressions such as essentiality of consumption, efficiency of infrastructure and production of goods, gratuitousness and social sustainability of work are true key expressions in order to bring about a responsible lifestyle vis-à-vis environmental problems. The second level is that of thought. On the plane of thought, if on the one hand we have the need to continue that millenary path on deepening the concept of the human person, on the other we have the need to redefine the concept of nature. This is because the environmental crisis has its roots in some directives of the human spirit which have brought Western civilization to take on as their own some values and categories, and no authentic change will take place unless we replace these values and categories. At the center of this transformation, there will certainly need to be the concept of nature. She can no longer be understood as the sphere of what is not human, which is typical of the Cartesian paradigm, which is dominated today, where there is a juxtaposition between subject and object, but it needs to be thought out as the totality of the physical world, which includes us as human beings. The failure, both in theory and in practice, of the Descartes model and the of this separating juxtaposition between person and nature, and of the model that identifies these, and I'm thinking about the ontological monism, which crosses the world of contemporary environmental thought, imposes a different and dialectic thought, a thought where there are links of connection between the subject, the object, and the environment, welcoming them. This is between the term person, nature, and environment, which express a relationship of mutual generation and immanence, in the sense that every term is at the same time cause and effect of the other. The third level is ethical, the awareness that the damage bestowed on the natural environment threaten the basis of life, stimulate the formation of a moral awareness on the environmental question, thrusting us towards the search for basic ethical principles with which to inform a personal and renewed relationship with nature. But in this context too, as at the thought level, we are called to necessary and deep changes. In fact, in the past, the consequences of actions on which we measured the objective responsibility of human choices was explicitated in a reduced space-time scale. Human actions had an impact, especially here and now. This position, thanks to technology development, is now radically different. Our actions on the environment have a space-time horizon which is widely broadened. The action of an individual person can have today repercussions in places which are very distant from the person and for a time span which is much more extended and can go beyond the course of one's own life. In other words, in the complex and fragmented ethical landscape today, the environmental question places the challenge to ethics to go beyond the two fundamental presuppositions on which it is articulated. The first is to go beyond the central role of the human person and his or her ethos, an ethics which considers adequately the nature-person relationship must necessarily consider at the same time both the specificity that of the human person that has been underlined, but also the value of nature and the inclusion of human in nature. Second pillar is about the relationship that ethics traditionally have always had between the persons who are alive at that time, whereas in classic ethics, the relationship is that of persons living on the land at that time. Environmental ethics must also represent the duties that current generations must have vis-à-vis the future ones, and therefore formulate their considerations belong the classic here and now. Then there is the religious level. It might surprise us that, thinking about those environmental crises, we talk about religious thought. But religious thought is useful for the translation of meaning. The reference to the religious events are limited to the Christian experience, the one which I believe I know a little better. But the same exercise can be done within every other religious confession. The questions as to how to be able to recover meanings appropriate to today of those relationships linking us to nature are a challenge for the man of faith that in the search for an appropriate and renewed relationship with nature is called to transform into culture even that component of revealed messages which is about our relationship with the natural world. Today, as never before in the past, the environmental issue is presented as a privileged locus where faith is directly called into play and where we are invited to explain the reasons for our hope, as the first letter of Peter suggests. In the current context, faith is called into play not so much for the apologetic response to those who have accused Christianity of being the main cause of the current ecological crisis, but faith is called into play because for a believer, the full semantic recovery of the relationships between person and nature implies 2 points. The first one is overcoming a polar model of person-nature in order to actually open up to relationship God-person-nature. The second moment is the rediscovery of one's relationship with nature in light of all the present relationality in creation according to the threefold perspective of time, past, present, and future, which in the horizon of the Judean Christian revelation becomes a protological past and historical present, and an eschatological future. In the light of this threefold perspective, we can obtain a re-semantization of terms human person and nature, and as a consequence, a value bestowed onto them. It is correct to say that in the light of the faith and Christian thought, first, we can give full value to nature because we recognize that as a creation, it has a value in itself, independently of that the value that man attributes to it. Furthermore, it is recognized that in nature there is a manifestation of God who is gift of self, as the Apostle Paul says, and its final goal is known, that of being the physical basis for new heavens and new earth, as prophesied by Isaiah and the Apocalypse. It can be another thing which can have value as well as nature is the network of relationships that links nature to us, because in this way we acquire the awareness that we are traveling companions towards the final recapitulation. Thirdly, new heaven and new earth, where God will be all in everyone. The third element, therefore, means the creative value of the human person in order to bring nature to God, because nature can be self-understood as a mediator, and we would be able to give value to it and guide it to the fullness we still don't have, and involve it in the cultural development of humanity through human work. At this point, Christian thought is called to undertake a step to replace with clarity, in light of this threefold value and relative semantization, its anthropocentric position deriving from the text of Genesis. This is a challenge within the challenge. This operation would have a great cultural weight, especially in ethical contexts where the many doctrines on environmental ethics are characterized by positions which are in contrast. All in all, the anthropocentric position affirms the fundamental difference between man and all the natural elements which represent his habitat. And at the basis of this position, there is the presupposition that the human person has a central role within the natural world, and the latter does not have a value in itself, but only the value that the human person attributes to it. The second setup, the physiocentric one, affirms the preservation of nature independently of the interests of man. This too, the latter belonging to nature as any other biotic element, should live in consonance with it, uniforming to its laws. As a consequence, it would be morally correct to perform everything that keeps ecosystems in the best possible conditions, and illegal everything that might damage it. Now, as we said, the Christian thought is invited to redefine the character of anthropocentrism, redefining this in the text of Genesis, which is equivalent to saying what anthropocentrism is correct for a nascent environmental ethics in a Christian context. The heart of Christian anthropology is the Christ event. This event will affirm the specificity of Christian ethics vis-à-vis the natural reality. The Christ event brings about a radical transformation of the human person, because as Paul says in the second letter to the Corinthians, if we are in Christ, we are a new person, and old things are past. Therefore, we are new creatures, not only because brought out of a situation of non-love that sin had relegated it into, but because the very agape of the Father, i.e. the love with which the Father loves the Son in Trinity, Paul says in Romans, was poured into his heart, in the heart of a new man. Now, this agape lives in him and fills him with the Spirit of God. In Jesus, we have become sons in the Son.
coinvolti nella vita stessa.
We are involved in the very life of God, one person in Jesus Christ. We are no longer individuals who are clammed in on the dimensions of our existence, but open to the eye of Jesus. We open up on all men and women. We are, as Cyril of Jerusalem said, family members and co-body members with Jesus and us. We become leaven of unity for the entire creation, human and non-human. We become persons who compose unity, not only there in inner dimension with the various expressions of human life, such as social, political, science, economy, but we compose in unity even peoples and cultures. These are persons who prepare with their action through their work the fullness of the cosmos. This is the type of human person, new creature, that determines the kind of anthropocentrism of Christian ethics. This is a Christic anthropocentrism, an oblative one, whose ontological weight with great difficulty is able to remain within the phenomenological classification of the current philosophical or sociological analysis in relationship with nature. There is therefore a human person who, in bringing about the gift of self, becomes more and more him or herself as she or he lives as son or daughter of God in full reciprocity with their other humans, so as to be one heart and one soul, and bringing humanity and natural world towards the life of God. In oblative anthropocentrism, we safeguard the specificity of human persons without them degenerating in a hypertrophic understanding of their I and their abilities, but founding in everyone and in society a culture of giving oneself, of giving the self to others. But it is necessary that all this happens today, that all this takes place in our day-to-day life, and this requires an ecological conversion, as we are reminded by Pope Francis in Laudato Si. And I conclude this to bring about a new model for the relationship between person and nature, aiming at resolving radically the anthropological presuppositions for the environmental crisis, won't be easy, but it is among the greatest and most urgent cultural challenges that our days place before us. To be able to come about to bring this about will give us a revolutionary taste, something which is comparable only to the Neolithic Revolution and the Industrial Revolution. However, whereas these two revolutions were gradual, spontaneous, and unaware to some extent, ours will necessarily need to be quick, fully aware, and inspired by strong values. From the various attempts so far attempted to create a new paradigm in our relationship with nature, and as a consequence, the sustainability of our socio-economical development, we understand an awareness that not only positive choices won't be enough on the part of individuals or groups or nations, but we will need structural changes in the world economy and international relations. At this point, a question comes about: will all this be possible without the acquisition of a new sensitivity to the common good of humanity, to the universal entitlement to goods, universal fraternity, and without a radical change in our consumer behaviors on the part of many humans? The challenge launched by the environmental crisis requires and solicits an anthropological model, therefore a figure of man or woman, for which we have not yet seen today, where the human person understands themselves not as a dominator according to the anthropocentrical perspective, nor as a common biotic element such as the physiocentric one, but understands themselves as an aware and responsible element of nature, but who transcends nature and is realized in its giving of self and to the natural environment they belong to. So an anthropological model where we go from a mainly individual point of view to one of communion, one of a limited group to that of a global human family. And here every authentic cultural tradition is called to give a contribution. Thank you very much for your attention.
Ringraziamo di cuore.
So we thank very much Professor Randinana for opening our vision on an issue that very often is reduced to economic considerations. I see it as an economist without having this deeper vision on what is really underlies it. So we'll have now a moment of an artistic break offered by the international musical group Gen Rosso as a conclusion of the second part of the program. We'll hear from them the songs Mother Earth and Love Wins All. And I asked Gen Rosso to come on stage and I thank them.
Buonasera a tutti.
Good evening, everyone.
Questa canzone è una preghiera di perdono ed impegno.
This song is a prayer of commitment. We have to keep this earth the way God has created it.
The shore, waves of this blue. You see, they listen to what water has to say. As a child, life moves in a dream. Rest your hands, let the bird go free. Why don't you listen to what water has to say? Why have people broken the peace with you? Oh, Mother Earth, Mother Earth, bless your children, Mother Earth, forgive us once more, Mother Earth, give us a chance, Mother Earth, praise the Most High. Teach my eyes what makes rivers flow. Let me try on my knees I plead. Oh, give me strength to face the shame of all my deeds. Fill my heart with a breath of love. Wash away all my hidden faults. Oh, will you answer me with one last chance to say, Bless your children, Mother Earth. Forgive us once more, Mother Earth. Give us a chance, Mother Earth. Praise the Most High, Mother Earth. Bless your children, Mother Earth. Forgive us once more, Mother Earth. Give us a chance, Mother Earth. Praise the Most High, Mother Earth. Bless your children, Mother Earth. Forgive us once more, Mother Earth. Give us a chance, Mother Earth. Praise the Most High. Mother Earth, bless your children, Mother Earth. Forgive us once more, Mother Earth. Give us a chance, Mother Earth. Praise the Most High, Mother Earth. Bless your children, Mother Earth. Forgive us once more, Mother Earth. Give us a chance, Mother Earth. Praise the Most High.
Grazie. Grazie, grazie, per noi è un onore essere qui questa sera.
It is an honor for us to be here this evening. We thank the Sophia University for making us this special invitation. We're very happy to be here, and now we want to give you our last song, Love Wins All, that will be issued on December the 7th with a video on digital platforms that is dedicated to Chiara Lubic as Giuseppe, foundress not only of Gen Verde and Gen Rosso, but also of the Sophia University Institute. And so to her, we dedicate this song with immense gratitude.
Tu vedevi intorno a te strazio e morte per le strade, mescolavi le tue lacrime con la polvere che ormai copriva la città. Perché quest'odio? Perché gridavi pure tu
Su quella vanità che tutti siano uno, il mondo dalla polvere si alzerà e questa è la tua vita, la tua eredità. Solo Dio che resterà e Dio sarà il mio ideale. Tu cammini ora con noi, percorrendo le strade, abbracciando il grande mare d'ansietà, nelle nuove povertà, nel grido dei perché che cresce dentro di noi e ancora dici tu a questa umanità che tutti siano uno, il mondo dalla polvere si alzerà e questa è la tua vita, la tua eredità.
شكرا.
Ci voleva un po' di bella musica, grazie infinite. Adesso apriamo l'ultimo momento di questo momento di inaugurazione dell'anno accademico. Inviterei qua professor Michele Zanzucchi, giornalista, responsabile dell'estensione universitaria presso l'Istituto Universitario Sophia, che modererà la tavola rotonda che adesso ci approcciamo ad assistere. Quali implicazioni per l'università, nell'era dell'ecologia integrale? Prego, professor Zanzucchi. È già qui? Sì, scusate, così? Grazie.
Buonasera a tutti. Si sente? Sì. No? Allora, inviterei a salire sul palco il professor Taccolini e la professoressa Stefania Papa, il nostro rettore magnifico Giuseppe.
Professor Argiolas.
Dopo la prolusione centrale.
After the keynote speech of this inauguration of the academic year 21-22, and after the words dense of meaning, epistemological and anthropological meaning of Professor Rondinara, in a time of pandemic,
Siamo ancora usciti dall'emergenza e speriamo di non dover.
And we hope we don't have to suffer. We discuss the indirect consequences that the virus that came from far away had on the academic world and our universities. In our media, we discussed a lot about the situation of primary and secondary school, but not so much about university, but the university had to deeply change its teaching method and its relationship. We heard these from the words of our student Valeria, who showed more than many speeches the hardship that lived the students. So we united some representatives of the academy, one from northern Italy, one from the south of Italy, and one from the center, to represent the whole of Italy. And we thought of Father Lantem Tada, coordinator of the Sector Ecology Creation of the Custody of a Service for Integral Human Development of the Vatican, but his superior Cardinal Parolin, Secretary of State of the Vatican, called him to take part with him in COP26 in Glasgow, so ubi maior minor cesset. But our panel is very authoritative, and if we are well ahead, a bit late with the program, I think there is an interest in what our invited experts will say with Professor Stefania Papa of the University of Campania. A big round of applause for her. Mario Taccolini, coordinator of the strategic development of the Brescia office of the University of the Sacred Heart, and our rector. Another round of applause. So before the dialogue, I want to give the floor to them, beginning with Professor Taccolini. First of all, thank you. I'm very glad to speak in this round table and to give a greeting and a great appreciation from the rector of the Catholic University of the Sacred Heart, Professor Anelli, and I had the privilege of being pro-rector of for a few years for him. And on the basis of this ground experience that I want to move to say a few words that I want to say to you by drawing from an expression that even in the essential character are very pregnant and are very binding for the institutions of high training, high formation that we all interpret and witness. Pope Francis, in All Brothers and in the encyclical of last year, says the educational commitment, the development of solidarity-based habits, the capacity of thinking of human life in a wholesome way, the spiritual depth are necessary realities in order to give quality to human relations. I think that underlying this strong and illuminating and binding affirmation of Pope Francis, we can see behind this the life of our universities. And in the daily dimension of this life, we feel more and more our responsibilities in a time, and that is with an expression that is very dear to Pope Francis, in a time in the world that lives a world war in pieces with growing disequalities between rich countries and low-income countries, with expectations of life and healthcare and in the field of work and education. So, in front of this radical crisis that invests our contemporary societies, and I quote again Pope Francis, All Brothers, in the way to eliminate others, we want to react to this with a new dream of brotherhood, a new dream of brotherhood that is opens up to dialogue with all people of goodwill. So I think we can see behind this strong message, this appeal to our universities that we could configure as Areopaga, that is crossroads where the critical hubs and the most crucial hubs of the present must be faced with an assumption of responsibility. And what is the first, as far as we are concerned, the first mission of our universities, of our institutions of high training? That is thinking and dreaming in great terms, thinking and dreaming high, to widen our horizons and invest, invest in education and training. Our university that celebrates this year 100 years, the Catholic University of the Sacred Heart, even with its temporal limits, always cultivated this attitude to lifelong learning. So behind the curriculum experience, behind the years, the academic years, university years, and some more words, the two encyclicals that are a point of reference for this inauguration of the academic year of Sophia, that is Laudato Si of 2015 and All Brothers of 2020, call on the axiological orientation of progress and the objectives and aims of formative institutions, and in a time that is characterized by accelerated changes, relevance taken in the last 3 decades by the ecological issues is an undeniable fact. So the institutions, our institutions of high training that declined the threefold mission that is teaching, training, and scientific research, and the so-called third mission. And so the institutions that give rise in order to favor research, training, and routing on the local area to face the most important challenges with important contents must, even more than in the past, must be addressed to reinforce the social responsibility and their grafting into society, their economic responsibility and their individual responsibility in training of individuals and organizations. So the contemporary university that catalyzes knowledge, talents, and resources in a complex and dynamic form, such as modern society that is in constant becoming and in constant acceleration, is called, first of all, in my vision, to acquire an extra effort of soul, a spiritual extra effort. This is the real reason, the reason of those Catholic universities that recognize themselves in the Christian inspiration, in the Christian values. And that is the moment to face this. The third mission is a real workshop, a real laboratory, a real test bench, where besides the scientific research, we are called to measure our values, our ideals in terms of education emergency with these challenges. And the ecological challenge, the environmental challenge is a priority. And if we read, if we make a comparison, a philological, rigorous comparison between these two encyclicals, read the two encyclicals and compare them, we see a consequential and a syntonic aspect. Laudato Si and All Brothers. All Brothers should be perceived as the consequence, the most realistic consequence, that is an assumption of responsibility. Thank you, Professor Taccolini. Can you hear me?
Meglio usare. Adesso si sente, sì. Bene, bene, grazie. Allora,
now you can hear me. We thank Professor Taccolini for your words, and I give the floor to Professor Papa, and I ask her, what do you think is the real meaning of the study of ecology in learning, in the learning you act in university? So.
Prova. Sì. Prova. Ok, questo si sente. Ok, benissimo.
Now you can hear me. Let's go back to the tradition. So first of all, I want to thank the Rector Argiolas for his invitation, and special thanks to all of you. When I received this invitation, I thought what I can do is to make available my skills, because I teach ecology in the University of Campania region. And so thinking of this meaning of what is ecology in university learning, I was thinking of a fragment of an anonymous of the 2nd century after Christ that is reported by Lloyd in his book, Crisis of the Historical Existence, where prophetically, 2,000 years ago, he announced one of the most serious crises of our time. And we read this fragment. One day, the cosmos that came to us, man, will not be admired nor considered worthy to be worshipped. This high good in its totality, the best thing that ever existed, that is, and that will ever be seen, will be in danger. It will become for man a weight, and it will be despised. So all of this cosmos, this beautiful work, this famous construction, this one unique form that can be seen and worshipped, praised by those who see it, will not be loved any longer. And time, end of quotation, time has shown that man could not inhabit in the earth. He used it, and now he shows how our desire, our illimited desire, are incompatible with the limitation of natural resources. We saw with the prolusion of Professor Rondinara that what is more urgent is to begin constructing in correct terms what is the covenant of man with the environment for a better quality of life. Then in this perspective, the study of ecology today, ecology meant as the study of relations, the relations between bodies and between those and the environment that hosts them. What can that represent? It represents a new way, a way to promote the development of thoughts and knowledge, but also attitudes that enable to think and project the relationship with the natural world in the direction of inhabiting the earth with more wisdom. So we wonder how can all this happen. According to philosopher Maureen, ecology is a new science that has basic premises that enable it to distinguish itself from science in the classical sense. In fact, classical science generates a non-communicability between different disciplines, and it escapes any relation between object and context. While ecology instead enables for an interdisciplinary recognition and the strict interrelation between the object and the environment where it is placed. In fact, it establishes a perspective where the object of the study must be contextualized in its own environment, but at the same time, the environment must be connected to the object we study. And for this, ecology enables intrinsically a communication between culture and nature, between man and nature, between society and nature, because it enables an ecological organization that refers to simple fact of simple human beings to a bigger ecosystem that includes everything where this being lives and is nourished. These general aspects of ecology make it a possible model to apply to all the other disciplines, not only scientific, an ecological model to be extended both to the organic and to the human. So ecology is a science that is based on interdisciplinarity. In fact, through the study of ecology, we are stimulated in connecting forms of knowledge by also grasping all the forms of interdependence. So through this discipline, on the one hand, we are educated to a way of knowing things, and on the other hand, we have a vision of ourselves and the world. So someone mentioned the ecological education, which is conceived as a formative project that involves synergically involves all dimensions of the person. That is the cognitive dimension, the socio-political dimension, the aesthetic dimension, the ethical dimension, and the affective dimension. So, from the cognitive point of view, this means promoting an alphabetization, favoring a scientific approach to environmental problems, while on the social political approach, commitment must be oriented to favor behavior that are addressed to the protection of the safeguard of natural goods, but also with a commitment for values such as mutual help, love to others, cooperation, and also search for welfare, for well-being in the qualitative sense. So the ethical dimension is manifested in a commitment to give our contribution to the construction of a better quality of life, because in a way we lost, in time we lost the awareness that our material needs are very likely much more elementary than what we are used to consider. In time, we have increased our needs and we are depauperizing all natural resources in order to satisfy them. So to develop the aesthetical dimension means to teach to look beyond the immediate perception and visual perception of reality, and as a consequence to experience a personal interpretation and a personal reflection on what we live. The affective sphere is crucial because it is connected to emotions. It could seem not connected to what we are saying, but it is fundamental. You must think that recognizing emotions basically means to learn to call ourselves into question, to accept ourselves, to be open to compare ourselves to others and take the things of the world and appreciate everything that is around us, the environment, the nature, etc., and take care about all the parts of our life. Since our childhood, we got used to look at life and conceive the world and relationships by isolating all the objects in vis-à-vis the environment. So in a way, we decompose the problems and we reduce what is complex to something simpler, up to getting to a sectoralization of our knowledge in different disciplines, separated disciplines. We should add to this the inherent intrinsic limitation and partiality of knowledge, the fact of establishing bilateral limits that are not able to grasp the interactive context, the interactive possibilities. And in this context, young people who are the main actors of today, how can they face all these? They are usually pessimists on the possibility to solve natural environmental problems and on the effect that can have their commitment. And I live this personally every day with all the students that in these years came after one another in my rooms when they came to compare, to talk to me. So this requires the activation of interventions by each of us to develop a positive self-image, because they're social agents and mature at the same time what is called the hope for the future. And the feeling of hope is can be taught, because we teach not by cultivating feelings of acceptation for things the way they are, but in a way we can help to develop a participatory intelligence that looks at things in a realistic way, and we have to face things in the best possible way. You can think even a small action can be effective because it could trigger a sequel of unforeseen events and give a sense of empowerment. That is, the feeling that we can personally change things. Then another strategy could be the narration of episodes or positive experiences that can witness collective or individual actions that had meaningful results. But a basic turning point from the educational point of view is the action projected by the students themselves, something that doesn't come from above, but something that can involve them. So the task of educators is not easy, because educators are called to organize a process of interdisciplinary research where disciplines are not objects of study, but they are tools, just tools for investigation. So educators are called to lead in a problematic but not a dispersive way the discussions by adopting a dialogical strategy of a Socratic style. So the challenge today is not to teach new notions or make students curious with special definitions, but it is rather to enable them to make a leap in order to reach, to master their way of thinking. And this leap on a logical level involves that personal theories on mind, on learning, on relations with the environment can become a gift for a common wisdom-based growth. Pope Francis in Laudato Si speaks about integral ecology, and a term that sums up what I said so far. In fact, he says that nothing of this world should be indifferent to us. The creation is a gift. It is not something that we buy on the market. It precedes us, but at the same time, it will exist after us. It is a gift that should be shared. End of quotation. So as a university, as institutions, as teachers, life challenges us to answer to two questions. Why the earth needs us? Where is your brother? In order to answer these two questions, the approach to the study of ecology necessarily passes by an interdisciplinary approach to a transdisciplinary approach. Transdisciplinarity opens a new path, a new field that is very fascinating, where the individual belonging to the disciplines means that we have to learn from others and be ready to be contaminated and fertilized as to become something new, something different. Of course, the capacity to face an authentic dialogue in this direction, it cannot be given for granted, and it is not only goodwill or the skill we can have, but we must have the courage for a self-despoilment from a cultural point of view. So the contribution of others and the offering of the gift of our science can stimulate a common growth for a higher level of knowledge. In the 70s, Dario Antisari insisted on the fact that this paradigm of transdisciplinarity is so relevant and decisive as to impose itself as an ethical command, an ethical commandment for every teacher, because Antisari says it is a presupposition of the global comprehension of human problems. So now we can think in a scenario such as the way we are living of globalization, we can face only by putting on the table all the disciplines together, economics, history, anthropology, geography, mathematics, etc. But in the same way, thinking of the environmental issues and energy issues also involve physics, economy, anthropology, history, ethics, chemistry, and we could insert many other disciplines. And all of these, what is it offering us? Good reasons to risk together in looking at the world and looking at man in a new way, in order to rediscover a new stage of our history. We could say that today transdisciplinary researchers are more and more rehabilitators of hope. The Sophia University represents the prodrome of what I just said, where we promote an integral relationship between studies, research, and the students beyond the specific skills and their geographical origin, have the opportunity to live a real experience of dialogue between the different the academic disciplines, but also going beyond what is the hyper specialization. So that university today is called to offer a supplement of thought, ready to interpret new challenges, new global challenges for time, for space, but also for culture, because they involve all the aspects of life, we could say not only human life, so they need to fructify all type of knowledge, including the popular traditions and religious faith, and the practices that humanity in time has developed.
Thank you, Professor Papa, for these very passionate statements which show the dimension which is ecological and integral of our teachings, and the knowledge, the radiation of knowledge. Professor, you have mentioned the third mission. How can we disseminate the third mission with Sophia, with wisdom? I think that the question of our authoritative interviewer forecasts double reaction. First of all, I would say that we need strategies, policies, practices. I'm trying to be brief and perhaps sapiential. That means that they are carried out with in mind clarity of the horizon within which we move. This is the horizon where we intend to pursue these practices and policies, strategies, in consistency with the inspiration, the founding reasons, and the mission of the institution, in this case, the university institution, where we are expressing and displaying these forces. But we should also say, with an ecclesiological hat, to move out of our academic perimeters in order to measure up, to compare, and this requires a work of deciphering, of analyzing, of discussing the context in which we are called to operate. And this is where the university must equip itself to its best and give its full potential, taking full advantage of its own tools of the trade. These are the scientific analysis tools, and looking at that plurality of knowledge which it is endowed with, in order to fully understand, in as much as possible, the context, the time, the emergence, the challenges before which we are called to operate. But I would not shy away from a provocation. And I refer to my own university, Ateneo Cattolici Italiani, how to cooperate with the Sophia University Institute. I refer to one single experience for now, but a very significant one, the Villaggio della Terra, the village of the earth, where we effectively operated from positions from common positions. We spoke the same language, that's to say, but I must say with the appreciation and recognition on our part of a cosmopolitan dimension that has always been part of Sophia and the Focolare movement, the many latitudes that represent the humus on which the Focolare movement and the Sophia University Institute, and I hope more and more, is called to operate. So these are worlds which are truly differentiated, which carry within the ability to interpret, which is truly rare and unique, though we consider that the Cattolica University is one of the 1,300 university in the world, the first Catholic university in Europe, with many different relationships. But this movement and the Sophia University Institute has this universalism, I would say, this cosmopolitan dimension, two quick and concrete responses. Back in 2008, Università Cattolica, with a certain pioneering spirit, has believed it right to activate the high school for the environment. Today, this is one of the 7 great training centers and research centers and working centers for the promotion on this area. It started in 2008, promoting a whole range of initiatives. Suffice it to refer to entrepreneurship, which is educational and didactic in nature. So this is clearly an invitation for all of us to form new generations from a perspective which is ecologically sound and consistent. At the same time, I would like to recall how other faculties have undertaken an itinerary for 8, 10, 12 years, which is very interesting, effective, and dynamic, always in this area. I refer to our agrarian science faculty, and this is, I believe, the 30th, 40th anniversary of the honorary degree to Chiara on the part of the agrarian faculty. It is called the Environmental Sciences faculty. 30 or 40, is it? Or is it economics? But in the Piacenza site. Now, agrarian science is clearly a interesting place. Father Gemelli, when he founded Cattolica in 1921, and activating the Faculty of Agrarian Science, I was saying this to my friend, the Dean, he wished to form agronomists for developing countries. Father Gemelli, founding in the mid-50s in Rome with the Gemelli Hospital, the Faculty of Medicine, wanted to train doctors for the developing countries. Another faculty which is effectively operating in this sense is the Faculty of Mathematical, Physical, and Natural Sciences as well. An extremely interesting project is underway, a very solid one, on the topic of contrast to pollution and policies and practices against pollution. Last but not least, the Faculty of Political and Social Sciences. This faculty is undertaking a series of agreements with many other universities in the world on the issue of safeguard, protection, and stewardship of creation through master's degrees, so within the postgraduate level, training new generations. And this is where I believe the challenge lies, not only practices, but great investment in the future. All this cannot but impact on the land. It must express the so-called third mission of our university. This is a call, as Pope Francis said to us in an insistent manner, to the church going outward. And I believe this should happen more and more, at least for those universities which recognize themselves as belonging to the Christian sphere. Thank you, Professor Taccolini. Thank you for these words. As time is short, I would give the floor to our rector, Agiolas. After 1.5 years in the trenches, and I'm using some expressions by Professor Papa and Professor Taccolini. How can we have a supplement of soul and an additional level of thought? And how do we respond to the challenge of our round table? What are the implications for university in the economy of the soul? This is a great question, but this time do not be fearful. I will be very brief because a rector knows when to press ahead, but also when not to abuse of everybody's patience. We have been through two extraordinary crises, 2008 economic financial crisis and the one taking place now due to the pandemic, which are similar because these are healthcare issues linked to economic and social ones. What's the common point in these crises? It is the issue of fragmentation of disciplines, of study subjects, but also the classes, the exercise of thought. These disciplines, even these faculties, even independently, have identified an issue in exercising thought due mainly to a lack of relationality. But that's not enough, because we need the ability to be able to have a complex thought and able to read complexity, and not every relationality is able to do this. Pope Francis says that we need to place persons at the center, and he does so in the logic that was very clearly explained by Professor Rondinara. Thank you. The ability to be in community within and in community with others and with nature. So I believe that the experience we have lived through invites us and recalls to rediscover communion, unity, and diversity as a hermeneutic category, a category enlightening our intelligence, enabling us to read correctly the context we are living through in order to find the adequate responses. And in finding them, others call me into play, and therefore the response cannot just be for others, but with others, to be given together. So university today cannot not place this at the fore. Otherwise, there is no third mission, there is no training, there is no research appropriate to today's time. Thank you.
Grazie, Professoressa Papa. Grazie, Professor.
Thank you, Professor Papa. Thank you, Professor Paccolini. Thank you, Professor Angiolas.
Grazie mille di questi stimoli.
Thank you very much for these impulses. And I would like to thank everybody for your deep listening, for your presence, even those who have been connected with us online. And before saying goodbye, we have a final gift by Gen Rosso, Fatti per Amare and Go for Love. As they are preparing, I would also like to thank all the technical group, including the translation office, which made streaming possible also in the English language, as well as the technical group here in the auditorium in Lopiano, accompanying us year after year and helping us to bring about this very important evening for us. All the personnel of Sophia and students and teachers who have worked in the realization, implementation of this evening. I hope we will meet again next year, perhaps without our face masks. And thank you very much for your presence and for being with us in our path together. Thank you very much.
You think it's easy to love someone as you love yourself. I have to say it's not easy to love me. My body has so many scars I can't see. But when you showed me your love, you gave me strength and new hope. I try to love you as much as you love me. And I keep trying 'cause I love this feeling. I'm choosing this path, even if I get hurt, even if I'm stressed out. I wanna go for love. I don't know where to start. Neither how I'm finna stop. Just know I go with God. I wanna go for love. La 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 love. La 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 love. La 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 love. Go for love. La 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 love. La 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 love. La 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 love. Go for love. Wanna give what I hope it will be enough. Yeah, I know it doesn't matter how much it is, 'cause I received so much more than I could give. I'm choosing this path, even if I get hurt, even if I'm stressed out. I wanna go for love. I don't know where to start. Neither how I'm finna stop. Just know I go with God. I wanna go for love. Tutti insieme, vai. La 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 love. La 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 love. La 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 love. Go for love. La 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 love. La 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 love. La 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 love. Go for love. La 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 love. La 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 love. La 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 love. Go for love. La 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 love. La 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 love. La 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 love. Go for love. I'm choosing this path. La 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 love. Even if I get hurt. La 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 love. Even if I'm stressed out. La 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 love. I wanna go for love. La 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 love. I don't know where to start. La 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 love. Neither how I'm finna stop. La 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 love. Just know I go with God. La 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 love. I wanna go for love. La 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 la.
Grazie.
One more? One more. Okay.
Guarda sotto i tuoi piedi se c'è, c'è acqua di palude che ti risucchia giù. Guarda sotto i tuoi occhi se c'è, c'è una fitta nebbia che non sopporti più. Guarda sotto il tuo campo se c'è una pianta secca che non fiorisce più. Guarda sotto il tuo cielo se c'è una stella smorta che non riscalda più. No, non fermarti qui, tu sei fatto per qualcosa di più, come l'acqua c'è per dissetare, come il fuoco è fatto per bruciare, tu sei fatto per amare, come gli occhi sono per vedere e la bocca è fatta per parlare. Tu sei fatto per amare, sei fatto per amare. Guardati dalle iene perché loro fanno la festa se non sei vivo tu. Guardati dai pirati perché danno in bocca gli squali se non li vinci tu. No, non fermarti qui, tu sei fatto per qualcosa di più, come l'acqua c'è per dissetare, come il fuoco è fatto per bruciare, tu sei fatto per amare, come gli occhi sono per vedere e la bocca è fatta per parlare, tu sei fatto per amare, sei fatto per amare, come l'acqua c'è per dissetare, come il fuoco è fatto per bruciare, tu sei fatto per amare, come gli occhi sono per vedere e la bocca è fatta per parlare, tu sei fatto per amare, sei fatto per amare. We are made for loving, we are made for loving, forte. We are made for loving, we are made for loving, di qua, we are made for loving, we are made for loving, ancora, we are made for loving, we are made for loving, in italiano,
siamo fatti per amare, siamo fatti per amare. Vai Sofia, siamo fatti per amare, siamo fatti per amare. Siamo fatti per amare, siamo fatti per amare. Siamo fatti per amare, siamo fatti per amare.
Grazie mille.
Grazie Sofia.
Thank you. Molto obrigado.
Ciao.
Scusate, Gen Rosso, possiamo chiedervi un blitz? Perché abbiamo un'occasione.
Can we ask you for some more, because there is, are we sure we're going to go back to, we know that somebody's 20 years old today, so perhaps we can sing happy birthday for her, and then I would ask all the Sophia people to come on the stage for a photograph. So I don't want to start singing, perhaps you can help us.
Chi è che compie gli anni?
Pauline!
This is Pauline from France. She's 20 years old today.
Tanti auguri a te, tanti auguri Pauline, tanti auguri a te.
Joyeux anniversaire. Ah, ecco, lo so, riuscita a dirlo. Ecco, la serata è finita, vi ringraziamo tutti.
The evening is over, so thank you very much, everybody. We continue to celebrate, but I would invite all students and professors of Sophia who are still there, if you could come onto the stage for a group photograph.